Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. If this is your first time here, my name is Jody, I love watches, and I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel by hitting the big button with the word subscribe on it. 6 years ago, I made a video titled, I'll never buy a Rolex Submariner, here's why. Much to my surprise, that video went on to be my most popular video ever, with over 1 million views. My argument was not one of price or even of availability, but of case size and case shape. I felt that the new at the time maxi case had completely killed the Submariner's previously elegant proportions. The case was too bulky, the lugs were too wide, and it looked awkward on wrist, completely lacking the finesse of the older 5-digit subs, as represented here by the Jeanneau Ocean Rover on the right, which is based on the 5-digit. No problem, Jody, buy an older 5-digit sub then. Well, yes, but also no, because they can be even more expensive than a new Rolex, and I just couldn't bring myself to pay 5 or even 6 times what the original purchaser had paid. So no Rolex Submariner for me then. Too bad, so sad. It seems, however, that Rolex watched my video because a couple of years later they increased the size of the watch even further, taking it from 40mm to 41mm, a decision that seemed to run counter with the general trend in the watch industry towards smaller watches. My questions today then are, with these size increases, have Rolex completely ruined the Submariner? Or, by changing the case, did they actually fix it? Did they right the wrongs of the old maxi case model that I was complaining about? And if they did fix it, does that mean that I would buy one? I'm going to answer these questions with the aid of a brand new box fresh Submariner purchased last month by none other than Mr. P, Stephen, my business partner at Erebus. Thank you very much for the loan of your shiny new Rolex, my friend. I promise to look after it. Stephen has spent quite a few quid on watches in the time that I have known him, and he bought so many Tudors that they introduced him to their friends at Rolex, and this sub followed not too many months later. So then let's start by looking at the packaging, discussing the fearsome price tag, then looking at the dimensions and specifications, before finally getting into the all-important wrist shots. Packaging then. Stephen only bought this one a couple of weeks ago, and as such it came in Rolex's 2024 packaging. I see online that they have changed their packaging for 2025, completely removing the Rolex branding, making it both look cheaper and making it easier to fake. Good job, Rolex. Talking of fakes, I will be careful not to expose the serial number on this watch, just in case anybody who shouldn't be watching is watching. I'm sure you've all seen these green boxes before anyway, there's nothing new here, but the fact that they are made of plastic means they are likely to look exactly like this in several decades' time. And there it is, the Rolex Submariner no date reference 124060. Which camp do you belong to, by the way? Date or no date? If you were getting one of these, which would you prefer? Leave me a comment, let me know why. I think no date is great for a rotation piece. That's how Stephen intends to wear his. I think date is ideal for an everyday watch, assuming you're okay with the Cyclops, that is, which I know a lot of people aren't. Personally, I think I would have gone for the date, even though it does cost a chunk of money more than this one. If I was buying one of these, I would be buying it to wear as my daily, so yeah, I'd want the date. I alluded to the price, so let's spill those particular beans then. The current Australian retail price is 14,650 Aussie dollars. That is, by most measures, a fair chunk of change. Now, I obviously checked my previous video 6 years ago on the sub. I didn't screenshot the price then, but I did quote it verbally, and I quoted it as less than 10,000 Aussie. So the price has gone up by, let's just call it a nice round 50% in 6 years. All those little 6%, 7% annual price increases compounding nicely. Do you know what? It doesn't really matter, does it? If you want a Submariner, if you really want a Submariner, you're prepared to pay pretty much whatever Rolex wants for it. And we can see that with how strong the used market still is on steel sports models like this one. It wasn't a 10 grand watch 6 years ago, it's certainly not a 15 grand watch now, but when you can leave the shop and then sell it for more than you paid for it, the price you paid becomes almost immaterial. If you can afford it in the first place, that is, of course. Mr. X always said that buying a Rolex was like having money in the bank, and he was right. Let's get on to the all-important dimensions then, and we already know at least one of them. They call it 41, I actually measure it at 40.8, so that's what I'm going to declare today. Still making this one the biggest Submariner ever. Thickness is 12.4mm, lug to lug is 47.8mm. Now, lug width, that also changed with the increasing diameter dimension to 21mm rather than the old watch's 20. There is plenty of taper on the clasp though, it tapers all the way down to 16.5, back up to 19 for the glide lock. As sized for Mr. P, but I can still squeeze into this one no problem. It weighs in at 151 grams. Absolutely nailing the weight sweet spot for a watch of this size. 300 meters of water resistance, flat sapphire crystal, and a Rolex caliber 3230 running the show. Rolex used their own proprietary 904L stainless steel, they call it oyster steel, for both case and bracelet. This one has the same classic brushing and polishing combination that Rolex have used for many, many decades. So, high polished sides, brushed upper lug surfaces, and an all brush bracelet. The mid case, as you can see on this though, is super slim, allowing it to really disguise some of its thickness, with that case back settling nicely into the top of the wrist. The screw down crown has the Coronet logo, and the current model has a high gloss ceramic bezel insert. They claim it's Cerachrom, that's what they call their ceramic. They've been using this one now for some years. The bezel itself is 120 click unidirectional dive time, by the way. Fabulous, as is the wind of the movement, really super smooth. You certainly do feel like you've spent some money on this one, because you have. The bracelet is a classic 3-link oyster style featuring Rolex's Glide Lock clasp. Now, this used to be my favourite clasp. It has since been replaced by Tudor's T-Fit, but the Glide Lock is still awesome. It gives almost 2 centimeters of adjustability without the need for a diver's extension. Dial and hands, I'm not going to dwell here today, because if this look, the Submariner look, is new to you, hello, welcome. It must be your first day on Watch YouTube. This look has been around since the 1950s, it hasn't really changed all that much. Applied white gold indices, white gold Mercedes hands, black enamel dial, the coronet and 2 lines of text above the pinion, 4 lines of text beneath it, all nice and symmetrical, because this is the no date version, of course. And of course there is lume, plenty of it. This is again Rolex's proprietary lume, they call it Chromalight. It fills the hands and the indices and the pip on the bezel insert. They switched from Superluminova a few years ago. Apparently this stuff outlasts Tritech's finest. It certainly does okay for itself in my customary 20-minute test, which I always say anecdotally is kind of like 4 to 5 hours of human eye equivalent. On then to the wrist shots. This is where this watch sinks or swims. Did they put yet another nail in the Submariner's coffin with the shift to 41, or did they fix the problem of the disproportionate maxi case? Well, do you know what? They bloody fixed it. It's a much, much more elegant case, far less unnecessary meat around the flanks, something I am unable to say about myself these days, and the slight expansion of the lug width also further reduces the width of the lugs, if you see what I mean. I don't think Stephen will ever take this one off the bracelet. With a bracelet this good, I'm not sure how many customers actually do. So the awkward lug width simply doesn't matter. Besides, people who buy these can well afford to spend a few more dollars on new straps in 21mm width if they really want to. Let's quickly flip back and forth between the old watch and the new watch using that footage of the Maxi Case 40 that I recorded a few years ago. I'll even dig out the world map for old time's sakes as well. The difference is stark and immediately noticeable, isn't it? So then, far from ruining the Submariner with the move to this 41mm case, Rolex actually fixed the mistakes that I at least think they made when they shifted to that Maxi Case 40. It is though a slightly bigger watch, obviously, but it really doesn't look like it, and it really doesn't feel like it either. I still don't understand why Rolex deleted the 39mm Oyster case. I found that one a bit perplexing. That really did run counter to the trend of size reduction, but now having worn one of these new current generation Submariners, I totally understand why they changed the proportions when they released this one. So does that mean there's a chance that I will in fact buy a Rolex Submariner? Well, in theory, this watch definitely appeals more than the model it replaced. But 15 grand Aussie, I'm just not sure I could ever do that. I found my comfort zone over the last 5 or 6 years for sure. That comfort zone sits around £3,500 Aussie dollars. So my position remains unchanged then from the one I held 6 years ago. I will never buy a Rolex Submariner, but the reasons for that position have changed slightly. Well done for making it all the way to the end of the video. Why not check out that sub review from 6 years ago, or my favourite Submariner, the two-tone black and gold. Thanks for watching this one. I'll see you again in the next one.